we recently picked up this super nice and badass 1998 Fountain Fever, 27 foot. But you guys also saw that this thing had some issues that are going to need to be addressed long term. You guys have saw the Eagle that we have too, the 1988 Seabold. We're working on that. And I had quite a few people message me asking if there's, things you should be looking for when buying a boat. It's a lot different than just buying a car. Everyone has a driver's license and can, just test drive a car. That's kind of common sense thing. But when buying a boat, it's not as simple as just hopping out on the road, trying it out, seeing what it's like. A lot of people make the mistake of not testing a boat before purchasing it and get themselves into some deep financial trouble when they find out they have to fix some stuff that they didn't know about right off the bat. So today we're going to be talking about what you should be looking for when buying a used boat and how you should go about buying a used boat, because for the most part, boat is it's not a cheap item. No. It's a luxury item. If you want to get a good one, they're unfortunately expensive for the most part, and it just sucks when we see people buy and spend a lot of money on a boat and then find out that they have to spend a lot more to even make it waterworthy. So first things first, rule number 1, never, ever buy a boat unless you can water test it. If you can't put it out on the water, don't buy it. Straight up. Number 1 for sure. Never do that. There's so many things that could be looked over or missed when looking at a boat if you just look at it on a trailer and decide to buy it. Mm-hmm. So many things. It's worse than buying a car without test driving it by far. Yeah. Because the water just will tell you so much about the condition of the boat. So first things first, when you show up to buy your boat or look at a boat, most of the time it's going to be on a trailer. Sometimes maybe it's going to be in the water already at a slip, and that's not a bad thing, but you do miss out on being able to check out the underneath of the boat and the condition of that. So first things first, when you're buying a boat, we're going to start as if it's on a trailer, okay? Just a general visual observation of this thing. Walk around it, look at it, see if anything's weird. So, let's just take a look at this boat, for example. You can see the gel coat on the exterior has a nice shine to it, which, much like a car, if it's clean, most of the time it's indicative that it's been taken care of or maintained at least semi-well. So, main areas you want to see on the outside, rub rail. This is going to be a pretty big wear item, so if there is some indications that it's been hit, I wouldn't say that's a super big red flag. Yep. I wouldn't say don't pay attention to that, but if there is some wear in this area, not the end of the world. Next, I would move on to looking underneath the boat. See if it's been scraped anywhere. See if there's been any sort of repairs done, and you can tell that most of the time by seeing if the gel coat is a mismatched color. So if one circular area has a little bit different shade than the others, that'll tell you, hey, there's probably been some work done in this area. So keep that in mind. This boat, I think there was maybe one spot on the other side where there was a little bit of an indicator that had been repaired. It's kind of dirty right now, so it's kind of hard to tell. But overall, this boat's in decent shape. We looked at it. Oh yeah. Pretty well. It's clean. You can see, looking here, there's a little bit of a rub there, a little bit of nick in the gel coat right there. Not a huge deal. Look for huge cracks or anything like that. That's going to be big red flag. And while you're down here, while it's on the trailer, look at the bunks. The bunks are these pieces of wood that are carpeted that the boat rides on. So you can see here, these bunks aren't in the greatest condition, or the carpet isn't in the greatest condition, I should say. It's kind of folded up over here, so these areas are going to be susceptible to some more wear because they're rubbing on the wood and not on the carpeting. So that's something we need to address on this. Definitely. Is the condition of the bunk. So that's not a huge deal to fix that, not a giant expense, but an important one long term. So keep that in mind.
Also, stress cracks at any of the joints on the bottom, definitely a big thing to look for. Want to make sure there's no leaks that you're going to have in the future.
Yeah, and as we said before, so this is a Fountain brand boat. Fountain this vintage unfortunately had some issues with water intrusion because of the style of the exhaust tip. So you could say the same thing about any boat, though. The condition of the transom is extremely important. That's a huge expense. So, I mean, you're looking at a $10,000 plus bill to, drop your boat off somewhere, have them pull the engine, de-rig everything, have a fiberglass company repair the transom. $10,000 easy.
Oh yeah.
And then if you get into the stringers, which we'll talk about later, the stringers are what the engine mounts to. That's an even higher, that just adds to it. It can add up fast. I mean, your boat can require more work and money than it's worth easily. So we have a moisture gauge that tells us the content of moisture in the wood that's in the transom. We've used that before. We use that pretty regularly. Obviously, not everyone has that type of equipment. And, well, it's pretty expensive too. I mean, $300 to $500 for a decent moisture gauge. Not a bad tool to have, by the way, but if you're just buying a boat one time and you don't think you're going to buy another one, maybe not the best investment. So a simple thing you can do on a boat transom is get like a rubber mallet, or even your hand in some cases. And let me preface this isn't an exact science. It's obviously not as accurate as a moisture gauge, not going to tell you everything, but you can go around the transom and just knock on it, and you want to listen for a difference in sound in certain areas. So obviously these areas where there's stuff fixed to the transom, like the drive, the exhaust, the trim tabs, those areas are going to be more susceptible to letting water in because, well, there's seals that seal everything up and prevent the water in, and those seals can age, degrade, and allow that water to get in. So just go around the transom and listen for a difference in sound. It should be a pretty dense sound that you're hearing. If you start hearing stuff that sounds like you're beating on a drum or it's hollow, that's what's going to be indicative of a transom that needs some work. So
big red flag.
Just think of it as piece of fiberglass out here, piece of fiberglass out here, wood in the middle. If that wood rots away and disappears, that's where you're getting your hollow sound from. Obviously, it's a little more complex than that, but in general, think of it like that. So this one doesn't sound bad. There's a couple areas we noticed that were a little hollower than the others, but that's what we determined this one is going to, I wouldn't say in the near future, but within probably 2 years, it's going to need a transom and the stringers too. So keep that in mind. This is huge, guys. This is probably the number one thing that gets people in trouble is the condition of this. From a visual standpoint, you can look for water lines or if there's any sort of rust that seems like it's coming down from any of these fixtures. That's indicative of a bad transom too. So just keep that in mind. As far as the drive goes, while we're back here, this lower part is called the skag. Check for cracks in that. It should look like this one. These are known to have paint knocked off of them. I mean, if the paint is knocked off of them, not a huge red flag. Just look for damage in this area. Chipped blades on the prop, that's huge. These are not cheap and can definitely affect the performance of the boat as well. Same thing with the skag. And yeah, just look for excessive wear while you're in this area.
Another thing to look for is shaft play on the shaft. This one's pretty good. No excessive play back and forth. Feels good. Turning both directions. No visual run out. Right.
One other thing that's super important is your boots that are in the drive. So John knows all about boots. He can show you kind of what to look for. It's kind of hard to see.
Yeah, super hard to see with the drive on, but you have a water hose right here. That's going to be your water pickup. Well, not on this boat because it's blocked off because there's a water pickup over there, but most boats will be using this water line right here for the water pickup. It'll go through the drive and then go up into the engine. That can be weathered and cracked, so you want to watch out for that, along with your main bellows, which protects the U-joints that go from the drive shaft to the engine. That's this boot right here. You want to make sure that that's not cracked and dry rotted, along with the last one, which is your shift cable boot. That one is also another big place that can let water in. So do a visual inspection of that before you buy the boat. With the drive all the way up, normally you can see if there's any dry rotting or any cracks, because that's a big place that water can get in from the back.
So a good way to test that, we're kind of going to segue into the water test, but we'll look at the engine compartment first and all the other good stuff. But when you're taking the boat out for a water test, as you're unloading the boat into the water while it's still attached to the trailer, the back of the boat is going to be submerged more because the front is going to be up on the trailer. So that's a great time to check and see if any of those boots are worn and letting water into the engine compartment, because they're going to be submerged more than when the boat is normally just in the water. So when the boat's still on the trailer and you're launching it, pop the engine hatch open and just take a look in there back by where the engine couples to the drive, and just see if you see any water entering. And that's not just for the drive. I mean, that's for anything that's rigged to the transom. You'll be able to get a better understanding if there's some problems there or not. So I think that's it on the boat, or from the outside in general, wouldn't you say?
Right, yeah. If you end up having to do boots are a pretty regular thing that you have to change every, I'd say, 3 to 5 years. You're looking at around $1,000 for a bill on that. You have to take the drive off, bell housing off, all that has to be cleaned and inspected, and then new boots. So, I mean, it's something that you're going to have to do, routine maintenance on a boat if you have one. But if they're looking cracked, that's what you're looking at about for a bill on it.
Yeah, and also we kind of touched on the trailer too. So most of the time a boat's going to come with a trailer. Just take a look at the trailer for big thing, fender condition. I mean, you need to get new fenders on your boat trailer like this one needs. I mean, easily few $100 repair. You're going to need to paint it to match, and damaged fenders can cause damage to tires. Tires, huge thing. Most tires out there are junk, just junk. Probably, if you see that the date code on the tire, which this one's actually pretty new, 16th week of 2023. That's a good tire there. Look for that date code. Most newer tires will be 4 digits. It'll indicate the week. The first 2 digits are the week of manufacture, and the last 2 are the year. So 16th week of 23, that's a fairly new tire. The rest of these ones, I mean, not great. So keep in mind, a tire bill can easily be a couple $100 too, and could leave you stranded on the way home from getting your new boat. So
which is worse.
Wheel bearings are also a big deal. If you have access to a floor jack, you can jack the trailer up and look for play in the wheel bearings. That's critical. This boat trailer needs some attention in that area. Condition of the lights. We've got some bad wiring down here from a blowout. That's going to cost us a little bit, albeit not a ton. Still an annoyance. We talked about the bunks. Condition of the winch. This one could maybe use some weld reinforcements. Not the greatest setup, but it's working. Look for a bunch of grease up there when you go to step on that and then track it into your new boat. That's always annoying.
Bummer.
Ask me how I know. Look at the jack. Make sure the condition of the strap's in decent shape. Same thing with the hook. Don't want that to come apart. This stuff's pretty much, just a visual that you can do. Not a huge deal.
Right.
So I think let's move on to the inside of the boat. We'll check out the engine compartment, which is the big thing, and then we'll get ready for this water test.
Yeah.
We got the engine hatch open. Going to talk about some key indicators that you need to look for when you're buying this boat as far as the engine goes. So just like a car, check the oil in the thing. So we got our dipstick down there. Pull that thing out. See if there's any indication of either the oil being super dirty or if there's any water that's in the oil. That would indicate a cracked block head, any sort of bad stuff like that that's going to cost you a lot of money. So very important to check that out. You got your drive fluid reservoir back there. Check and make sure that's at the appropriate range. You can see if there's any sludge or nastiness floating around in there if you pop that cap off. And then also, if you were on the exterior of the boat, this is a little bit more involved, but to see if there's water in the drive, you could take or loosen up the drain plug on the drive and look for water to come out, because the water is going to be at the bottom. So
You
that
have to
would
lower
come
the
out
drive
first.
down first.
Yeah, the drive does have to be down for that. So that's a little bit more involved. A lot of you guys probably aren't going to want to do that, and that's understandable. We didn't do that on this boat, but something you can do if you want. What else?
Power steering. So this has the hydraulic rams on the outside, so it's got the bigger reservoir, and the cap is not the same as a normal cap. It's closed off, but if you have normal steering, you'll take the cap off of there and check to make sure that's at the appropriate level and the fluid looks good in there. Another thing is checking the stringers in here. So yeah, as we said before, if you have a moisture meter, definitely checking the moisture content of the stringers. But if you don't have a moisture meter, just tapping the sides of them. As we said before, if it sounds hollow, there's an issue. The motor mounts is a big thing. If there's any space in between the top or bottom of the motor mounts, that would indicate that the stringers are wet and that there's an issue. So if the bolts are pulled in at all, or if there's any space, that's a major red flag. That's going to mean that your motor's moving around, the alignment for your drive's going to be wrong, major issues there.
One other thing that's more mechanical than structural is, so these are called the risers. There's a gasket between the riser and the exhaust manifold. The gaskets are known to leak, so you can look for like water stains that are coming down from the riser and then onto the exhaust manifold. Those are pretty common to leak. The transom back here, you can do the similar procedure like we did outside. Look for any sort of water stains dripping down. Just go around, do some hammering. You can go down to the stringers like John said. Listen for hollowness. You know, on this one, we found a couple areas where it sounded a bit like knocking on an empty drum, which indicates there's rotten material inside. That's going to be super critical. There's blower fans. This has 2 of them, so those take the exhaust fumes out of the engine compartment and push them to the outside, which is especially important when you're starting the boat if you're not going to lift the engine hatch. Don't want any sort of thermal event occurring underneath here. So you can check the blower fans. There's a switch on the dash. Make sure both of those run. This one doesn't work on this boat, which I didn't know, so we'll have to get a new one over there. Yeah, the bilge pump is super important. So the bilge pump is what's going to pump out any water that accumulates in the bottom of the boat. Most of the time, I mean, no matter how good your boat's sealed up, you're still going to get a little in there. There's different kinds. Some have automatic float switches, some are manual. This one's a manual one, so just make sure that's working. So in the event that there is water coming in, you can get that pumped out and you don't end up at the bottom of the sea. Real bad deal there.
The trim fluid, that's something also that you can check. Make your drive go up and down. We checked that. Checking if you take that cap off, just make sure there's no debris in the bottom. The fluid looks clean. There on the top here, once you back the boat in the water, this is a major point of failure that's pretty common in these later 90s boats. So when you back the boat in the water, there's a steering pin or steering shaft that is right there that from the factory, they come normal steel and they will end up rusting and corroding, and then there's space in between the shaft and the bushing that surrounds it, and water will leak through there. That is a very expensive fix, very labor intensive and time consuming. So that's a major area to check, and that has to be done when you back the boat in the water, though. There's not a really good way to check that before it's going in the water. But that's another major thing to check. Other than that, making sure none of the bolts on the back of the transom are loose or pulling through.
Right, so a bad transom, the wood will get spongy, and when the wood gets spongy, it's inherent that the bolts are going to loosen up because there's no real tension on the bolt anymore. So go around, look at your fasteners, make sure they're not loose or there's some big gap. Again, water stains. Sometimes people, when they do get to that point, will like double nut them to try and fasten them in a little bit tighter, so be on the lookout for that. Again, transom, huge expense, so be very cognizant of that. But, yeah.
That's pretty much everything that you want to look for, at least the major things when buying a boat, so you don't have expenses that you weren't expecting.
Right. Obviously, if you can get maintenance records from the previous owner, that's a good thing. Big thing that leaves a lot of people stranded and gives them problems is the freshwater water pump. So that's going to be what picks up water from the outside and brings it into the engine. So those, it's like a rubber impeller that's riding on a piece of metal. So those are essentially a wear item. Every couple years at the most, you should be changing that out as a piece of maintenance. If there's no indicator that that's been done and you do buy the boat, plan on doing that right away, because it'll leave you stranded. Something super simple can
cause overheating and
bad deal.
Premature engine failure.
Bad deal. So obviously there's other things you can pay attention to. The overall condition of the boat, like I said, about the exterior, it's going to be a pretty good indicator on how someone took care of the boat. So just look to see if it's been abused, see if there's any, grease stains in the carpet that someone might have tracked in from climbing on a trailer or anything like that. Chances are a cowboy probably owned it then. Again, pay attention to the gauges and make sure all your switches are working up there for the drive, trim tabs if you got them, just all that functional stuff up there. Just a simple on-off test is going to be very telling if you got some stuff that needs addressing. So I think that's going to be about it for what you should look for before you put it in the water. So we're going to hook up to the boat, we're going to go put it in the water, and we're going to do a little bit of a water test. Now, water test doesn't need to be anything crazy. Like John said, there's things you want to pay attention to when you're backing it in. That's very quick. And once you get the boat out on the water, spend 10 to 15 minutes on it, and we'll kind of show you what you got to do once you're out there to see if it's a winner or if it's a pooper. Because those are the two kinds of boats. There's not much in between. There's winners and there's poopers. What do you think?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, we've covered everything that we can do on land, so now we have to go put her in the water.
Sounds good.
See you out there. So we got out on the water, and we're just going to show you guys a couple things that you should be looking for when you take a boat out on the water for your water test. So again, you only need to spend, in most cases, 10 to 15 minutes out here doing some basic stuff. So we'll get out here a little bit. Get her up to speed is probably number one, so you want to make sure that the boat gets on plane, just to make sure the engine is, mechanically where it should be as far as the power goes. There's no, low compression in an engine. Obviously, it'd be super convenient if you could leak down the engine, do a compression test, all that. But if the boat planes out roughly where it should be at, that's a very good indicator that the engine and, power is there. So
It's at least healthy.
yeah. Other basic things, I mean, you're looking at water temperature. 150, 160 degrees is average. If it has an oil temperature gauge, making sure that's not spiking. Oil temperature likes to climb under high load situations or long pulls, so just be cognizant of that. A lot of these have oil coolers. Again, going back to like the seawater pump, the impellers can disintegrate and you can get pieces of impeller in your oil cooler. There's just a lot of stuff that can be going on. Yeah, so just pay attention to the gauges that it has. That's a big thing. Make sure they're all in the middle or nothing's pegged out one way or another, super high, super low, and you'll be in good shape. Probably the biggest thing is, if you got silent choice exhaust, make sure that works.
Yeah, you need that.
That's number one. Number one.
She's got to sound good.
Need all the flow, get all the power.
It's number one, guys. Another thing, just monitor every now and then. You can open up the engine hatch, make sure there's no, ton of water coming in or anything like that. Just be aware. Look for leaks. Both stuff coming in and stuff coming out.
Also, take note of the RPM at your peak mile per hour. That can give you an indication of if you're overpropped or underpropped and all of that sort of stuff, depending on where your engine builder wants your engine to be living at.
Most big blocks, they're normally happy around 5,000 to 5,200, fully pegged out. That's a good indication of being or having the correct prop size.
Yep. All right, let's see. Let's take this thing off, see how she does. This thing does have a pretty big prop on it for the engine. Just means it needs more power. So this does take a little bit to get up on plane, but once it goes, she goes pretty good.
sweet ride.
You love to see it, guys. You get a good running boat, I'll tell you what, there's nothing like being out here. It's just one of the many freedom zones that you guys should experience. It's just a different feeling. Being out on the water, it's crazy. So hopefully this video has been helpful for you guys if you're looking to get a boat. Just pay attention to this stuff. I mean, there's unfortunately a lot of bad boats out there. Boats get a bad rap because people don't take care of them. But if you get yourself a good boat, guaranteed to have some fun. It's going to cost you some money, no doubt, but being out here on the water, I mean, look at this.
Beautiful.
Where are you going to see this, man? This
Paradise.
Thanks for watching this video. Appreciate your guys' support in this matter. Have a great night. See you on the water.
Rich rules, baby!